Hello, and welcome to the Super English Talks. This is the place where learning English becomes simple, easy, and fun. I'm your host, Clara, and I'm really happy that you're here with me today. Before we start, I want you to do something. If you can, close your eyes for a moment. Now, think about a time when you heard a song in a language you didn't understand. Maybe it was a song in Spanish, Korean, or French. You couldn't understand the words, right? But even without the words, you could feel something. You could feel the emotion. Maybe it sounded happy, or maybe it sounded sad. You could tell if it was calm, exciting, or full of energy. That is the power of listening. Listening connects us to feelings and meaning, even when we don't understand every word. And today, we are going to talk about how you can use this amazing power to improve your English. We're going to learn a very simple but very powerful method listening to English every single day. Now, maybe you're thinking, Clara, I'm so busy. I have work, I have family, I have things to do. I don't have time to study English every day. And you know what? I completely understand. Life is busy. It's not easy to find time for everything. Let me tell you a little story. Many years ago, when I was learning another language, I felt exactly the same way. I wanted to learn fast, so I bought big grammar books. I made flashcards for vocabulary. I studied for hours, learning new words and grammar rules. But when I tried to watch a movie or talk to a native speaker, it felt impossible. The words came too fast. Everything blended together into one big, confusing sound. I couldn't catch anything. I felt frustrated and even a bit hopeless. I thought maybe I was just not good at languages. Then one day, a friend gave me some simple advice. He said, Clara, stop studying so much and start listening more. Just listen every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes. Listen while you do the dishes, listen while you walk, listen while you drink your coffee. Let the sounds of the language fill your ears. At first, I didn't believe him. It sounded too easy. Could it really work? But I decided to try it. I found a radio station in the language I was learning and played it every day. At the beginning, it was just noise, just sounds I didn't understand. But after some days, something started to change. Slowly, my ears began to recognize a few words. Then I could hear short phrases. After a few weeks, I could understand the general topic of conversations. After a few months, I could watch TV shows and understand most of what people were saying. It wasn't magic. It was the result of listening every day, even for a short time. That experience completely changed how I learned languages. And that's why I want to share this message with you today. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to study for hours. You just need to build one small habit, the habit of listening to English every day. In this episode, I'll show you step by step how to do that. We'll talk about why daily listening is so powerful, what kinds of things you should listen to, and how to fit listening into your life, even if you're very busy. So grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's begin this journey to better English together. Think about it like learning to play the guitar. If you only practice once a month for 5 hours, you won't get very far. Every time you play, it feels like you're starting again. But if you practice for just 15 minutes every day, your fingers remember where to go. You get better little by little. And soon, you can play songs without even thinking about it. Learning English is the same. If you listen every day, even for a short time, your ears get stronger. Your brain starts to recognize sounds, words, and sentences automatically. You begin to understand more and more without effort. So today, I want you to make a promise to yourself. Just 10 or 15 minutes of English listening every day. You can listen while you clean, cook, walk, or relax. It doesn't matter when. What matters is that you listen every day. Because small steps, done consistently, lead to big results. And soon, you'll notice something amazing. English will start to feel natural to you. So, are you ready? Let's start this beautiful habit together and make your English stronger, one day at a time. When you practice something again and again, your brain and your muscles start to form a new connection, a new habit. Learning a language, especially improving your listening skills, works exactly the same way. Our brains are truly amazing machines. They can learn, grow, and change. But to do that, they need two things: repetition and consistency. That means you have to do something many times, and you have to keep doing it regularly. When you listen to English every single day, you're actually training your brain. You are teaching it to recognize the special sounds, rhythms, and patterns of the English language. There's even a scientific word for this process: neuroplasticity. That word might sound complicated, but it simply means that your brain can change and adapt when you have new experiences. Every time you listen, you're building new roads in your brain, new pathways that help you understand English better and faster. Let me tell you a story about one of my students. His name was Carlos. Carlos moved from South America to the United States for his job. He was a very smart man, and his reading and writing in English were excellent. He could read business reports, understand complex information, and write clear professional emails. But when he was in meetings with his American coworkers, everything changed. He told me that it felt like everyone was speaking a completely different language. They spoke quickly, used slang and idioms he didn't know, and each person had a different accent. Carlos said he often felt lost. He would sit there, nodding his head and pretending to understand, but inside he felt nervous and confused. He didn't want to ask questions because he was afraid people might think he wasn't smart or capable. His confidence started to disappear, and soon it began to affect his performance at work. Carlos tried everything he could think of. He went to evening grammar classes. He read English newspapers. He studied vocabulary lists. But his listening skills just didn't get better. He felt stuck, really stuck. One day, we talked about his problem, and I shared with him the same advice my friend gave me years ago. I told him to stop worrying about grammar for a little while and focus only on listening, daily listening. I gave him a very simple plan. For 1 month, his only homework was to listen to a 30-minute English learning podcast every day on his way to work. No studying, no writing notes, no checking the dictionary, just listening. Carlos looked surprised. "That's it?" he asked. "Just listen? How will that help me understand business meetings?" I smiled and told him, "Trust the process. Just keep listening. Give your brain time to adjust." So he did. In the first week, he still felt lost. Everything sounded too fast. But he kept going. In the second week, something small happened. He realized he could understand the introduction of the podcast every single time. That was a tiny success, but it gave him motivation to continue. In the third week, he started to understand the main ideas of each episode. He couldn't understand every word, but he knew what the story was about. And by the end of the first month, he could follow almost 60% of the podcast without feeling tired or stressed. Then something amazing happened at work. During one of his team meetings, his boss was explaining a new project. As he listened, Carlos suddenly realized that he understood almost everything. The fast words didn't sound like noise anymore. He could hear clear words and phrases. He understood the key points. He even understood some of the jokes his coworkers were making. At one moment, He felt confident enough to ask a question, out loud, in front of everyone. That was a big moment for him. What happened to Carlos wasn't magic. It was science. His brain had adapted. Through daily listening, his brain had built new pathways, just like a muscle getting stronger with exercise. He didn't need to memorize grammar rules. He just needed time, patience, and daily exposure to real English sounds. That's the power of consistent listening. When you listen every day, your brain starts to change. Little by little, the sounds become familiar and English starts to feel natural. By listening to clear, well-spoken English every day through the podcast, Carlos was doing something very important. He was building a strong foundation. He was training his ears to hear the basic sounds, rhythms, and music of the English language. This daily listening was like exercise for his brain. It helped his brain get faster and stronger at understanding English speech. Soon, the conversations in his meetings didn't sound too fast or confusing anymore. His brain could now connect what he had learned from books to the real English people spoke around him. So when you ever feel like you're not making progress, I want you to remember two people, Carlos and the guitar player we talked about earlier. Learning English is not about studying for hours and hours. It's about small, consistent actions you take every single day. That's how you build a skill. That's how you build confidence. And that's how you will transform your English listening ability. Now that we understand why listening every day is so powerful, let's talk about how to listen. Because here's something very important. Not all listening is the same. There are actually two main types of listening, and understanding the difference between them will make your practice much more effective. We call them passive listening and active listening. Let's think of this like exercise. Passive listening is like taking a gentle walk. You're moving your body, you're getting fresh air, and it's definitely better than sitting on the couch. But you're not thinking about your heart rate or muscles, you're just enjoying the walk. In the same way, passive listening happens when you have English audio playing in the background while you're doing something else. Maybe you're listening to an English news channel while you cook dinner. Maybe you play an English pop song while you drive. Or maybe you put on a podcast while you clean your house. You're not trying to understand every single word. You're simply surrounding yourself with English, letting the sounds, rhythm, and melody of the language wash over you. It might feel like you're not really learning, but actually, passive listening is very powerful, especially for beginners. It helps your brain feel more comfortable with English sounds. It makes the language feel less scary or strange. It's like dipping your toes into the water before you jump into the pool. This type of listening reduces stress. It helps your ears tune into the music of English, the way voices rise and fall, the natural rhythm of speech. That's something you can never truly learn from a grammar book. It's a calm, low-pressure way to increase your exposure to real English. Think about how a baby learns its first language. A baby doesn't study grammar rules. It doesn't memorize vocabulary lists. A baby just listens for hours and hours, every single day. Slowly, the baby's brain learns the patterns of sound, the rhythm of speech, and the meaning of words. That's the secret power of passive listening. Now, let's talk about the second type, active listening. If passive listening is a gentle walk, then active listening is like going to the gym for a real workout. This is when you give all your attention to what you're hearing. You are not multitasking. You're not checking your phone or cooking dinner. You're fully focused on listening and understanding. In active listening, your goal is to engage deeply with what you hear. You might listen to a short audio clip 2 or 3 times. The first time, just listen for the main idea. The second time, focus on small details, maybe new words or phrases. The third time, Try using a transcript, which is the written version of the audio, so you can read and listen together. When you listen actively, you start asking yourself questions like, what is the main point the speaker is trying to make? What does this new word mean in this situation? Why did they use that tone of voice? You might pause the audio to check a new word. You might rewind a few seconds to hear a difficult sentence again. That's active listening. It takes more energy and concentration, yes, but this is where real improvement happens. Active listening helps you grow your vocabulary, understand grammar in real use, and catch subtle sounds and expressions that you might miss otherwise. So remember, both kinds of listening are important. Passive listening surrounds you with English naturally. Active listening helps you focus and grow deeply. Together, they make the perfect combination for building strong English listening skills. Let me tell you another story, this time about a woman named Maria. Maria was a nurse from another country, and she dreamed of working in the United States. To do that, she needed to pass a very difficult English exam. One big part of that exam was listening comprehension, understanding spoken English about medical topics. The problem was, the audio clips in the exam were really tough. They were full of medical terms, long sentences, and speakers with different accents. At first, Maria felt overwhelmed. She thought, how can I ever understand all of this? So, she decided to start small, with passive listening. She began playing English medical dramas and health-related podcasts in the background while she did her chores. Sometimes she listened while cooking, sometimes while driving, and sometimes while folding laundry. She wasn't trying to study, she just wanted her ears to get used to hearing medical English, the rhythm, the pronunciation, the flow. This helped her brain become comfortable with medical words and the sound of English used by doctors and nurses. But Maria knew passive listening alone wouldn't be enough to pass her exam. So she decided to add active listening into her routine. 3 times a week, she sat at her desk for one focused hour, no phone, no distractions, no multitasking. She found short videos online of doctors explaining different medical conditions. Her process was simple but powerful. First, she watched the video once and tried to write down the main idea in just one sentence. Second, she watched again, pausing whenever she heard a word she didn't know. She wrote those words down and tried to guess their meaning from the context before checking a dictionary. Finally, she watched the video one more time, this time with subtitles, to check her understanding. After watching, she practiced speaking out loud, explaining the medical topic in her own words, as if she were talking to a patient. It wasn't easy. It was hard work and sometimes exhausting. But Maria stayed consistent. And after just 2 months of this focused, active listening, something incredible happened. Her skills improved dramatically. She understood medical English much more clearly. She could recognize terms instantly and didn't panic when people spoke quickly. When she finally took her exam, she passed with a very high score. And the best part? When she started her new nursing job in the US, she felt confident and prepared. She could understand her patients and her coworkers. She could join conversations, ask questions, and explain things clearly. Maria wasn't just surviving in English, she was thriving. So, what can we learn from Maria's story? The lesson is simple. The best way to improve your English listening is to use a combination of passive and active listening. You can't rely on just one. If you only do passive listening, your progress will be very slow. If you only do active listening, you might get tired or bored and want to give up. But when you combine them, when you mix the gentle walk of passive listening with the focused workout of active listening, you get the best of both worlds. Here's how you can do it. Use passive listening to fill the small, empty moments in your day while commuting, cooking, cleaning, or relaxing. This keeps your brain connected to English in a natural way. Then, schedule active listening sessions 2 or 3 times a week. These are your focused workouts, your study time. Listen carefully, take notes, pause, rewind, and repeat. By balancing both types, you create a plan that is powerful and sustainable. It doesn't burn you out, but it keeps you improving every single day. Now, one of the most common questions I get from students is, "Okay, Jara, I'm ready to listen every day. But what should I listen to?" That's a fantastic question, because the type of material you choose is just as important as the listening itself. If the content is too difficult, you'll get frustrated and want to quit. If it's too easy, you won't learn anything new. And if it's boring, well, you won't stick with it. The secret is to find material that sits right in the middle, the sweet spot. It should be interesting to you and just challenging enough to help you grow. Let's talk about finding your level. I want you to imagine that you're swimming in the ocean. If you stay in the very shallow water, where your feet can always touch the sand, you'll be safe, but you'll never really learn to swim. On the other hand, if you swim too far out into the deep water, where the waves are huge and you can't touch the bottom, you might panic and feel like you're drowning. The best place to learn is somewhere in between, where the water is deep enough that you have to swim a little, but still shallow enough that you can stand up if you need to. It's a little challenging, but not terrifying. Your listening practice should feel exactly like that. The perfect material is something you understand about 70 to 80% of. That means you can follow the main story or main ideas without too much trouble, but there are still some new words and phrases that make you stretch your ability just a little. This balance keeps your brain active and growing. Language teachers sometimes call this kind of input comprehensible input. That simply means you mostly understand what you're hearing, but there's still space to learn something new. Here's a good rule of thumb. If you understand everything 100%, it's too easy. Find something a bit more challenging. If you understand almost nothing, maybe only 20%, it's too hard. Find something simpler. Keep adjusting until it feels just right, like swimming in that perfect middle zone. And now, let's talk about something that's just as important, maybe even more important than your level. It's this. Find something that truly interests you. This is the magic ingredient. When you enjoy what you're listening to, it doesn't feel like studying. It feels fun, exciting, and natural. You start learning almost without realizing it. Think about your hobbies, your passions, the things that make you smile. What do you love learning about? What do you never get tired of talking about? Whatever that thing is, I promise you, there is content about it in English. Let me tell you a story about Kenji, a man from Japan. Kenji was an amazing cook. He loved making traditional Japanese food, but he wanted to learn how to bake European-style bread and pastries. So, he bought a few English cookbooks. But when he tried to follow the recipes, he got confused. The words were complicated, the instructions were long, and he wasn't sure if he was doing the steps correctly. He started feeling frustrated. Then one day, Kenji discovered something wonderful, cooking channels on YouTube, all in English. He found one channel hosted by a friendly British baker who explained every step clearly and showed everything on camera. Kenji started watching these videos every day. At first, he used subtitles to help him, but because he was passionate about baking, he didn't mind. He was motivated and excited to learn. He wasn't just studying English anymore. He was learning something he loved. He began to learn useful words like knead, proof, glaze, and rise. He understood the baker's instructions more and more. After watching a video, he would go into his kitchen and try the recipe himself, listening again as he baked. Little by little, he started improving both his baking and his English. After 1 year, Kenji was baking amazing sourdough bread and beautiful croissants. But even more surprisingly, his English listening skills had improved more than he ever imagined. And that's the secret. Kenji didn't learn English because he forced himself to study. He learned it naturally as a side effect of doing something he loved. So now, let me ask you, what's your passion? Are you like Kenji? Do you love to cook? Then find cooking podcasts or YouTube shows in English. Do you love sports? Listen to podcasts that analyze your favorite team. Do you enjoy history, science, technology, or gardening? There are thousands of English videos and podcasts about every topic you can imagine. When you listen to something you truly care about, you'll stay motivated. You'll look forward to listening every day. And that's when real progress happens, when learning becomes something you want to do, not something you have to do. Don't just choose a podcast because it says Learn English. Choose one about a topic you're genuinely curious about. That's how you'll stay motivated in the long run. Here are a few great places to find listening material. Podcasts like this one are fantastic. There are podcasts for learners at every level and for native speakers, covering every topic under the sun. Audiobooks are another wonderful resource. Listening to a story read by a professional narrator is not only relaxing, it's also a powerful way to absorb natural English. And often, you can find the ebook version too, so you can read along as you listen. YouTube is a visual goldmine. You can find everything: news reports, documentaries, comedy sketches, cooking tutorials, travel vlogs. The visuals make it easier to understand the context, which really helps your listening comprehension. And of course, there are TV shows and movies. Start with ones you've already seen in your native language. Since you already know the story, you can focus on the language itself, how people actually speak, how sentences flow, and how expressions are used. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to become an explorer. Spend a little time searching for content that excites you. Find that friendly British baker, that passionate American historian, that adventurous Australian travel vlogger, whoever captures your interest. When you find something you love, you won't have to force yourself to listen every day. You'll want to. You'll look forward to it. And that's when real, sustainable learning begins. All right, we've covered why you need to listen daily. We've talked about active and passive listening and how to choose the right material. Now, let's get practical. Let's talk about some specific techniques you can use during your active listening sessions to get the most out of your practice. Think of these techniques as the different exercises in your listening workout. You wouldn't go to the gym and only do one exercise, right? You train different muscles to get stronger overall. In the same way, using a variety of listening techniques will strengthen all the different micro skills that make up real comprehension, like hearing connected speech, catching intonation patterns, and recognizing natural rhythm. The first, and maybe one of the most powerful techniques, is called shadowing. It sounds a bit mysterious, but the idea is simple. Shadowing means listening to a short piece of audio and repeating it out loud at the same time as the speaker. You're trying to be their shadow, to follow their voice as closely as possible. You imitate their pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation, almost like singing along. Why is this so effective? Because it directly connects listening and speaking. It forces your mouth to make the same sounds you're hearing, which trains your brain to recognize those sounds more easily next time. It's a very active process. You can't think about your grocery list or your messages while you're shadowing. You have to be 100% focused. It's fantastic for improving pronunciation, fluency, and even confidence. Let me tell you about a student named Sunhae from Korea. Sunhae had an excellent understanding of English grammar and a strong vocabulary. But when she spoke, she sounded hesitant, slow, and careful, and her pronunciation was heavily influenced by her native language. She often felt self-conscious when she tried to speak English. So, she decided to start shadowing, just 10 minutes a day. She found a podcast with a host who spoke very clearly. Every day, she put on her headphones, played a sentence, and immediately tried to repeat it, copying the speaker's melody and rhythm. At first, it was hard. The words felt clumsy in her mouth. But she kept practicing. After a few weeks, her friends started to notice a change. Her speech sounded smoother. Her rhythm was more natural. And the biggest change of all was in her confidence. Because she was practicing the physical act of speaking English every day, she began to feel more comfortable, less hesitant, in real conversations. Shadowing helped her build the muscle memory for speaking English. Let's try a very short shadowing exercise right now. I'm going to say a simple sentence. I'll say it twice. The first time, just listen. The second time, say it out loud with me. Ready? Here's the sentence. Backhand index pointing right, I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Okay, just listen once more. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Now let's try it together. I'll say it a little slower this time. Say it with me. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. How did that feel? A little strange at first, perhaps. But did you notice how it forces you to pay close attention to every single sound? That's the power of shadowing. Our second technique is called dictation. This one might feel a bit more traditional, maybe something you did back in school. But it's incredibly effective for improving your accuracy. Here's how it works. You listen to a sentence. You pause the audio. Then you write down exactly what you heard. After that, you listen again and check your work. Why does this work so well? Because it forces you to focus on the details, the little sounds and structures that we often miss in fast speech. It helps you tell the difference between similar-sounding words like ship and sheep or live and leave. It also helps with grammar and spelling. When you write a sentence, you can't just capture the general idea. You need every article, every preposition, every verb ending to be correct. I once worked with a young man named Paolo, who was preparing for a university entrance exam. He kept losing points on the listening section because of small mistakes. He'd hear, "He has been working," but write, "He has been work." He knew the grammar rule, but under pressure, he wasn't hearing those tiny sounds clearly. So he started doing daily dictation exercises. He used short news videos that came with transcripts. He'd listen to one sentence, write it down, and then compare it with the official transcript, circling every single mistake, no matter how small. This process was like putting his listening skills under a microscope. It trained his ear to catch those subtle but important grammatical details. And when he took his exam again, his listening score went up dramatically. This next technique is simple, but it's one of the most powerful. After you listen to something, a podcast story, a news report, or even a short video, your task is to summarize the main points in your own words. You can do this in two ways. You can speak out loud, as if you're telling a friend what you just heard, or you can write a short paragraph about it. Summarizing does two very important things. First, it proves that you really understood the content, not just the words, but the meaning behind them. To summarize, you have to identify the main ideas and separate them from the smaller details. Second, summarizing forces you to process the information actively. You take what you heard and rephrase it using your own vocabulary. That's a deeper level of understanding than just passive listening. It also helps move new vocabulary from your passive knowledge, words you recognize, to your active knowledge, the words you can actually use when you speak. You don't need to use all these techniques every single day. You can make a simple weekly plan. For example, on Mondays and Wednesdays, do 10 minutes of shadowing. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, do a short dictation exercise, maybe 15 minutes with a news clip or podcast. On Fridays, listen to a short story and record yourself summarizing it on your phone. By mixing these different exercises, you keep your learning fresh and interesting, and you'll develop a complete, balanced set of listening skills. These techniques are your tools. If you use them consistently, you'll build a strong foundation for English listening success. Of course, every journey has its challenges, and learning to understand English is no exception. It's completely normal to face obstacles along the way. In fact, expecting them and knowing how to handle them is a sign of a smart learner. Think of me as your guide, helping you navigate through the tricky parts of the path. Let's start with one of the most common challenges, fast speech. You know the feeling. You're listening to a native speaker, and it sounds like the words are flying out of their mouth like a machine gun. They connect words together, drop sounds, shorten phrases, and before you know it, everything blurs into one long stream of sound. You might think, I'll never be able to understand this. But here's the truth. This happens to everyone. Even native speakers sometimes struggle to understand someone who speaks very fast or has a strong accent. So, what can we do about it? One of the best tools we have today is something very simple, the playback speed controller. Almost every platform, YouTube, podcast apps, and even online courses lets you slow down the audio. You can set it to 0.75x speed or even 0.5x speed. And no, this is not cheating. It's smart training. Slowing down the audio gives your brain more time to process the sounds, separate the words, and understand what's being said. It's like watching a fast-moving action scene in slow motion. Suddenly, you can see all the details you missed before. Let me tell you a story about how this can help. I had a student named Fatima who loved watching interviews with her favorite American actor. But there was one big problem. He spoke incredibly fast and used a lot of slang. When Fatima watched, she could only catch a few words here and there. It was frustrating. She felt discouraged. So, I showed her a simple trick, how to use the playback speed feature on YouTube. She started watching her favorite actors' interviews at 0.75x speed. Suddenly, she could hear the way he connected his words, like changing going to into gonna. She could hear the rhythm of his sentences. She began to notice the little pauses, the intonation, the natural music of his voice. After a few weeks of listening at this slower speed, she tried watching again at normal speed, and she was amazed. This time, she could follow the conversation much more easily. Her brain had adapted. So, use the technology you have. Start slow, and as you get more comfortable, gradually increase the speed back to normal. It's not cheating, it's training your ear to move from beginner to fluent. Now, the second big challenge, accents. You might get really good at understanding your American English teacher, but then you listen to someone from Scotland, Australia, or India, and it feels like a completely different language. This can be very frustrating, but I want you to see it not as a problem, but as an opportunity. English is a global language. Being able to understand different accents is a super skill. It makes you a true international communicator. The key here is exposure. Don't just listen to one accent. Make a conscious effort to hear English from different parts of the world. If you usually listen to American podcasts, try a BBC podcast from the UK. Watch an Australian movie. Find a YouTuber from Ireland or Nigeria. At first, it will feel strange and difficult. Your ear is tuned to one familiar pattern, so new sounds will seem confusing. But the more you expose yourself, the faster your brain will adjust. You'll start to recognize the patterns in each accent, the vowel sounds, the rhythm, the way people stress certain words. Think about it like visiting a new city. At first, every street looks the same and you get lost easily. But after a few days of walking around, you begin to build a mental map. You recognize landmarks. You learn where the main streets are. It's the same with accents. Each new accent you listen to is like exploring a new neighborhood of the English language. It makes your mental map of English bigger, clearer, and more detailed. So be an accent explorer. Be curious. Don't be afraid of not understanding everything at first. Every minute you spend listening to a new accent is helping you grow into a more skilled and confident global communicator. The third challenge is unfamiliar vocabulary and idioms. You're listening along, understanding everything perfectly, and then suddenly, the speaker uses a word or phrase you've never heard before. Your brain freezes. You get stuck trying to figure out that one word. And while you're thinking about it, you miss the next two sentences. Sound familiar? This is a very common problem. The most important skill to learn here is guessing from context. Don't panic when you hear a new word. Keep listening. Often, the rest of the sentence, or even the next one, will give you clues about the meaning. For example, the journey was very arduous. We had to climb steep mountains and walk for 10 hours every day. Even if you don't know the word arduous, you can guess that it probably means difficult or tiring. That's the power of context. This skill takes practice, but it's worth it. It means becoming comfortable with a little uncertainty, learning to keep listening even when you don't understand every single word. You have to learn to let go of the need to understand every single word. This is one of the hardest things for many English learners to do. But it's also one of the most important. When you listen, try to focus on the bigger picture, the main idea, the message the speaker is trying to share. You don't need to know every little detail to understand what's being said. Think about how you listen in your first language. When you're listening to someone tell a story or give a talk, you don't stop and think about every single word. You just follow the meaning, right? That's exactly what you want to do in English too. And here's something that might surprise you. Even native speakers don't know every single word in the dictionary. They often hear new words and just guess what they mean from context. They use the situation, the tone of voice, and the other words around it to understand the meaning. So if native speakers can do that, you can too. Now let's talk about another very common challenge, losing focus while listening. You start your listening practice full of energy and motivation. You tell yourself, okay, I'm going to really concentrate this time. But after just 5 minutes, your mind starts to wander. You begin thinking about your emails, your dinner plans, or that funny video you saw earlier. It happens to everyone. Our brains simply aren't designed to stay intensely focused for long periods of time. So what's the solution? The answer is simple. Practice in short bursts. Instead of trying to do one long, 1-hour listening session, break it into shorter sessions, maybe 3 15-minute ones. That's much easier for your brain to handle. When you know you only have to focus for a short amount of time, it's easier to stay engaged and alert. It's like doing short workouts for your brain instead of running a marathon every time. Also, try to minimize distractions. Put your phone on silent and leave it in another room. Close the extra tabs on your computer. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. And if your mind does start to wander, don't get frustrated. Don't think, oh no, I can't focus. Just gently bring your attention back to the audio. It's like meditation. The practice isn't about never losing focus. It's about gently bringing your focus back again and again. That's where real progress happens. Remember, facing these challenges is part of the learning process. Every time you push through a difficult accent, every time you guess the meaning of a new word from context, every time you refocus your attention, you're getting stronger. So don't be discouraged. Embrace the challenges. Use the strategies we've talked about and keep moving forward on your English listening journey. Now, let's talk about something that everyone struggles with: time. Life is busy, really busy. Between work, family, errands, and trying to have some kind of social life, it can feel like there just aren't enough hours in the day. So when a teacher like me says, you need to practice your English listening every single day, a very natural reaction is, when? When am I supposed to do that? And that's a completely fair question. Many people give up on their language learning goals not because they lack motivation, but because they can't figure out how to fit English practice into their daily routine. The truth is, you don't need to find more time. You just need to use the time you already have more intelligently. There are small, hidden pockets of time in your day that can be turned into opportunities to practice listening. This is where passive listening, the gentle walk we talked about earlier, becomes your secret superpower. You don't have to create extra time in your schedule. You just have to change what you're listening to during the things you already do. Let's think about a typical day. For many people, the day starts with a commute. You might be driving your car, sitting on a train, or riding a bus. That time, which might seem wasted, is actually a perfect opportunity for listening practice. Instead of listening to the same old music playlist, try switching to an English podcast. You could listen to a story, learn something new about science or history, or catch up on the day's news, all while you're traveling to work or school. You're not adding any new time to your schedule. You're simply transforming dead time into learning time. It's such a simple change, but it makes a huge difference over time. Let me tell you a story about a woman named Clara. Clara was a single mother with 2 young children and a full-time job. Her dream was to get a promotion at work, but she knew she needed to improve her professional English. She felt completely stuck. She told me, "Jara, I get up at 6 a.m. to get the kids ready. I work all day. I come home, make dinner, help with homework, and by the time the kids are in bed, I'm too exhausted to even think about studying." We sat down together and looked carefully at her daily schedule. We found 2 pockets of time she could use for English listening. The first was her 30-minute drive to and from work. That was 1 hour every day. The second was the time she spent doing evening chores, like washing dishes and folding laundry, usually another 30 to 40 minutes. I suggested that she dedicate these times to English listening. During her commute, she listened to a podcast about business and management. It was directly related to her career goals, so it kept her engaged and motivated. In the evening, while doing chores, she listened to something more relaxing and entertaining, like an audiobook or a comedy podcast. It didn't feel like studying at all. It was her time to unwind. Clara did this consistently for 6 months. She didn't open any grammar books. She didn't do any writing exercises. She just listened. When her next performance review came around, her manager was impressed. He noticed that Clara was speaking more confidently in meetings. She was better at understanding her international clients. She was contributing more to discussions. And the best part? She got the promotion she had been dreaming of. Clara didn't magically create more hours in her day. She simply repurposed the time she already had. She stacked a new habit, English listening, on top of routines she was already doing. This is a powerful strategy that anyone can use. Think about your own daily routine. Where are your pockets of time? Do you walk your dog every morning? That's a perfect time for a podcast. Do you spend an hour at the gym? Put on an English audiobook instead of music. Do you cook dinner every night? Let an English news channel play in the background. The key is to make it easy and effortless. Have your listening materials ready to go. Create a playlist of podcasts on your phone. Download an audiobook so it's waiting for you. If you have to spend 5 minutes searching for something to listen to every time, you're less likely to do it. But if you can just press play, the habit becomes automatic. It's also important to match the type of content to the activity. If you're doing something that requires focus, like driving in heavy traffic, choose something easy to follow, like a story you've heard before or a simple conversation. If you're doing a mindless task, like folding laundry or washing dishes, you can listen to something more challenging that requires your full attention. By using these small moments wisely, Clara was able to make huge progress, and you can too. Don't underestimate the power of small moments. Even just 10 minutes while you wait for the bus, 15 minutes while you make your lunch, or 20 minutes while you go for a run, all of these small sessions add up. If you can find just 30 minutes of listening time in your day, that adds up to 3.5 hours a week, 14 hours a month, and 168 hours in a year. That's a huge amount of exposure to English. And the best part? You don't even have to feel like you're studying. You're just using time that already exists in your day in a smarter way. So take a look at your own schedule. Where is your hidden learning time? Find it. Use it. And watch your English skills grow, even on your busiest days. Now, I want to shift gears and talk about something that is at the very heart of how we learn and connect with each other: storytelling. From the earliest days of human history, long before we had books or computers, we had stories. People would sit around fires and share tales, stories of heroes, adventures, ancestors, and dreams. Stories are how we make sense of the world. They're how we pass on knowledge, culture, and values. And when it comes to learning a new language, stories are one of the most powerful tools we have. Why is that? Why is listening to a story so much more effective and memorable than memorizing a list of vocabulary words? It's because our brains are wired for stories. When we listen to a list of facts or grammar rules, only the language processing parts of our brain are active. But when we listen to a story, our whole brain comes alive. If a character is running through a forest, the part of your brain that controls your legs becomes active. If you hear about the smell of freshly baked bread, the sensory part of your brain that processes smells fires up. We don't just hear the story, we experience it. We are transported to another place and time. We feel the character's joy, sadness, or fear. This deep emotional connection is what makes the language stick. The new words and grammar structures are no longer abstract. They are embedded in a rich, meaningful context that makes them easy to remember. Let me share a personal experience. When I was learning Spanish, I struggled with the past tense. There were two forms, the preterite and the imperfect, and I could never remember when to use each one. I read all the grammar explanations. I did hundreds of exercises. But in real conversations, I always made mistakes. Then I discovered a podcast that told historical stories from Latin America. I was fascinated by the stories of ancient civilizations, explorers, and revolutions. I would get so lost in the narratives that I completely forgot I was studying Spanish. After a few months of listening to these stories every week, something amazing happened. I started to feel the difference between the two past tenses. I couldn't explain the grammar rule perfectly, but I knew. When the storyteller described the scene, what the weather was like, and what people were doing, they used one form. When they described a specific action that happened and was completed, they used the other. I had learned the grammar not through rules, but through context, through the natural flow of storytelling.